What would you do if the person you were told to marry treated your life as nothing more than a line on a balance sheet? For Alicia Johnson, the question was never hypothetical. It was the cruel reality that framed her first steps into adulthood. At 23, Alicia had no parents left to shield her. Her mother died when she was 13. Her father had been gone for years. All she had was her uncle Robert Johnson, a stern man with sharp eyes and even sharper priorities. He cared less about Alicia's happiness than about business leverage. So when an opportunity to secure a real estate partnership with the wealthy Brown family appeared, he did not hesitate. He summoned Alicia into his polished living room on a heavy summer evening and said, Alicia wanted to protest, but the words never made it past her lips. Nodding had always been safer than questioning. She had grown up learning that her feelings did not matter, not to relatives who housed her out of duty, not to neighbors who whispered orphan like an insult, and certainly not to Uncle Robert, who saw her as a bargaining chip. She was not being asked to choose a husband. She was being instructed to sign her life away. On the morning of the wedding, Alicia stood alone in a side alcove of the cathedral. A borrowed veil trembled between her fingers. There were no bridesmaids, no effusive laughter, only Robert whispering urgently with Anthony Brown, Marcus's father, 2 pews away. The stained glass blazed with color, but its beauty felt cold. The ceremony promised to seal a negotiation more than bless a union. Marcus arrived 15 minutes late. His suit was sharp, his cologne strong. He glanced at Alicia once to confirm she was physically present, then winked at his friends lounging near the back. The organist stumbled, unsure when to begin. The priest cleared his throat and asked the ancient question if anyone knew a reason the couple should not be joined. Speak now. Silence thickened until Alicia's own voice slipped out, small but undeniable. I do. Gasps ricocheted along the marble nave. Robert's nails pressed crescents into her arm. Do not ruin this deal, he hissed. Color drained from her cheeks. Fear, the oldest reflex of an orphan, sealed her lips again. The priest, crimson with confusion, resumed the rite, as though nothing had happened. Vows followed like purchase orders. Alicia repeated the words, because that was what the moment demanded, not because her heart consented. Confetti spiraled outside, disguising the tremor in her hands. A photographer begged for a smile. She produced a grimace that looked in retrospect like a hostage proof-of-life shot. Marcus shook hands, admired his reflection in the limousine window, and already seemed bored with the spectacle. That evening, the mansion on Atlanta's north side greeted its new mistress with silent corridors and locked cupboards. In the master bedroom, Marcus tossed a scarlet silk nightgown across the mattress. Wear something respectable tomorrow, he said, unclasping his cufflinks. I cannot introduce you to people looking like Charity. Alicia, trained to say thank you, even for scraps, folded the gown with ceremonial care, though it pinched her dignity like barbed wire. Days blurred into humiliating tableaus. A fork slammed because her stew was bland. A dress ripped from her shoulders because it clashed with his image. A mobile phone shattered when she tried to call the seamstress who had once treated her kindly. Each apology felt smaller than the last until even her own name sounded foreign in her mouth. When loneliness grew unbearable, Alicia began a diary. Thin pages devoured blue ink and unspilled tears. She wrote of saints in stained glass who watched, but never intervened, of a veil that fluttered like a frightened bird, of a husband who called her an asset in public and baggage in private. She ended one entry with a line she dared not whisper aloud. I have married a vacancy masquerading as a man. Atlanta glittered beyond the windows with mercies she could not reach, breezes along the Chattahoochee. Laughter from rooftop bars, music pulsing from passing cars. Inside the window, latches clicked each evening as Marcus performed his ritual of possession, locking her in as casually as another man might draw a curtain. Every bolt slid home like a full stop at the end of whatever sentence Hope was still trying to write. By the second week, Alicia understood that the house was not the prison. The prison was the certainty that she would never be allowed to leave it on her own terms. Marcus's routines hardened into laws. On Mondays, he jogged at dawn and returned only to complain that the bathroom smelled too feminine. Tuesdays, he appeared early enough to taste dinner and dismiss it as either flavorless or barbarically spicy. Both verdicts ended with the plate in the trash. Wednesdays, he did not return at all, sending a bri. Alicia marked the days in the margin of her diary, like tally marks on a cell wall. June 3rd, he snapped, because the water glass had fingerprints. June 10th, he joked that my voice could curdle milk. June 24th, he asked if orphans even know how to love. Each entry ended with the same question, in careful cursive. What is the price of silence? She did not dare write the answer. What would you do? The opening question had asked. Alicia now knew the crueler truth. In a world that measured her as a cost center, survival would demand an invoice of its own. And the interest on silence would be everything she had left. The second week in this brown mansion was when Alicia finally understood that the house itself was not her true prison. The white walls gleamed, the polished floors reflected every step, and yet the atmosphere closed around her like invisible bars. The real prison was the certainty that she would never be allowed to step outside on her own terms. Marcus returned from work one Tuesday evening, tossing his keys on the marble counter. He sniffed the air with disdain. The stew Alicia had prepared simmered on the stove. He lifted a spoon, tasted it, and spat into the sink. Bland as tap water, he sneered. The plate clattered into the trash, as though her effort had been nothing more than waste. On Wednesday, he never came home at all. A brisk text arrived on her phone around midnight. Business drinks do not wait up. The message carried no greeting, no concern, only authority. Alicia sat in the darkened living room, her diary open, her pen trembling. She wrote the line carefully, tonight. I wait for a ghost. Thursdays were worse. He entered the house humming songs from clubs, perfume clinging to his suit jacket. When she asked timidly if he had eaten, he waved her away as though she were a servant. Friday nights were the darkest of all. He stumbled through the door, reeking of alcohol, his cheeks flushed, insults rehearsed in bars ready on his tongue. Her silence only provoked more scorn. Alicia began to notice the details that defined her captivity. The metallic click of window latches each evening, the measured weight of his footsteps in the hallway, light when sober, heavy as thunder when drunk. She learned when to hold her breath, when to pretend to sleep, and when to stay perfectly still. The rituals were suffocating, but defiance seemed impossible. She tried once to open the front door while he was showering. Her hand trembled on the handle, her heart racing with hope. But the lock was firm, the key always in his pocket. The sound of running water ceased, and she panicked, rushing back to the couch and arranging her face into practiced calm before he emerged with a towel slung around his waist. He never suspected, but the failure crushed her spirit. The diary grew thicker with entries. June 3rd, he snapped because the water glass had fingerprints. June 10th, he laughed that my voice could sour milk. June 24th, he asked if orphans even know how to love. She ended each entry the same way. What is the price of silence? One stormy Friday, Marcus staggered into the living room with lipstick smeared across his collar. Alicia begged him quietly, not for fidelity, only for caution. Please, Marcus, at least be careful. Use protection. We might both pay for your recklessness. He froze, incredulous, then burst into jagged laughter. You, a charity girl, giving me advice. The slap came so hard it spun her sideways. The second struck her ear, leaving her skull ringing. He threw her against the railing, fists raining until she crumpled. The chandelier tinkled overhead as if applauding cruelty. When he tired, he hurled her onto the carpet like refuse. Blood filled her mouth with a metallic taste. Alicia lay curled until dawn broke gray across the windows. He snored upstairs, oblivious. With monumental effort, she pulled herself up, slipped into a faded wrapper, and staggered barefoot into the driveway. Stones pressed into her feet, but she scarcely felt them. She walked 6 blocks in pouring rain to her uncle's house. At the gates, soaked and trembling, she pleaded with the guards. "Tell my uncle, please, Alicia is here." Minutes dragged beneath the downpour before Robert Johnson appeared under an umbrella, silk pajamas untouched by rain. "Neighbors will talk," he hissed. "Go home. Uncle just one night inside. I fear he will kill me." "That is a wife's burden," Robert snapped. "Besides, you chose him." The umbrella shifted to keep him dry while water streamed down her face. The gate shut, locks sliding into place, thunder cracking above. Alicia staggered back into the storm, her heart collapsing with each step. By the time she reached the mansion again, dawn painted the sky pale blue. The front door was locked. Too weak to climb the wall, she sank onto the welcome mat, etched with cheery words, "Love, laugh, love." She remained there, shivering, until Marcus opened the door to leave for work. He stepped over her without pause, phone to his ear, muttering about sales targets. "You look pitiful," he said coldly. "Clean yourself before the neighbors see." The door slammed behind him. Alicia stayed on the mat, limbs heavy, wondering if death might feel kinder than survival. A stray kitten padded up and mewed. She stroked its wet fur and whispered, "We are both unwanted, aren't we?" The kitten purred, a fragile proof that gentleness still existed in the world. Atlanta's skyline shimmered beyond the windows, but for Alicia the morning brought no freedom, only the realization that escape would require more than courage. It would require a door she had not yet imagined into existence. Alicia slept through most of Saturday, as if her body had to shut down before her mind could think. When she woke, the house felt colder. On the counter lay the broken phone Marcus had smashed. Her diary waited beside it, a spine of blue ink, and whispered prayers. She wrote 4 sentences. "I went to Uncle Robert. He shut the gate. I came back to the mat. I am here." She slid the book under the couch cushion. The ritual did not change the facts. She was one mistake away from another storm. That evening, Marcus returned early. His smile was too smooth, like glass before it shatters. He said nothing about the night before. He ate, showered, and slept. Alicia watched his breathing and calculated what safety looked like. Silence for now, she decided. Sunday brought distant church bells. Alicia sat by the window and whispered a psalm her mother had taught her. She would live through the next hour and then the next. Again. On Monday, she cleaned the bedroom while Marcus showered. She gathered his clothes and emptied his pockets. A crumpled receipt slid from the navy trousers. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the pharmacy header, the date, and the medications listed below. Azithromycin, cefixime, metronidazole. They did not look like vitamins. At the orphanage, she had listened when the nurse spoke about infections and the way careless choices travel from one body to another. Her fingers went cold. The water stopped. Alicia folded the receipt and tucked it into her blouse just as the bathroom door opened. Marcus walked past her with a towel at his waist and cologne in the air. He did not notice the way her hands shook. He did not notice much about her at all unless he needed someone to blame. Alicia finished tidying and carried the laundry downstairs. In the hallway mirror, she met her own eyes and saw the answer to a question she had avoided. If he is careless out there, he can destroy me in here. She cooked a careful dinner. Grilled chicken, rice with garlic, spinach in butter. She set the table and practiced the words she needed. Not an accusation, only a boundary, a plea for safety. When Marcus came home after 10, she helped him with his jacket and waited until he had eaten. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Please do not be angry." He kept chewing eyes on his plate. Alicia placed the folded receipt beside his fork. He glanced at it, then at her. "What is this?" "A receipt," she said. "From the pharmacy." "I am not asking questions. I am asking that you use protection. I am asking for safety for both of us." Marcus stared until the stare turned into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You think you can instruct me?" "You." "I am asking for care," she said. "That is all. Please." He pushed back his chair. The legs scraped the floor in a shriek. Alicia flinched. He crumpled the receipt and let it fall. Then he leaned forward until his shadow cut across her face. "You will not bring trash into my house and call it wisdom." He walked away. The conversation had not exploded yet, but the fuse was burning. Alicia sat still until the door slammed and the alarm beeped. She washed the dishes with slow hands. She could not make Marcus careful. She could not make Uncle Robert kind. She could only choose what truth to keep inside. Thunder started again. Alicia stood at the window and counted the seconds between flash and sound. She pressed her palm against the glass until the cool steadied her. Tomorrow would ask for courage she had never used before. Morning arrived with the smell of rain on concrete. Alicia dressed and tied her hair back. She cleaned, she cooked, she breathed. At noon, she opened her diary and wrote a single line. "If my voice is all I have, I will spend it on life." She closed the book and waited for the day to turn toward danger first, and then toward a hand she had not yet seen. Tuesday night arrived heavy with humidity. Marcus returned later than usual. His shirt wrinkled, his eyes sharp with alcohol. Alicia had placed his favorite dish on the table. She waited in silence as he tasted it. For one brief moment, his lips curved. "Not bad," he muttered. Relief flickered through her. Maybe tonight would pass without pain. Then she spoke. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. "Marcus, I know you see other women. I am not asking you to change that. I am only asking that we stay safe. Please use protection. I do not want to die because of your choices." The air froze. He stared at her as if she had spoken treason. "You," he whispered, "a charity girl telling me how to live." He laughed, jagged and cruel. His chair scraped the floor as he stood. Before she could step back, his hand cracked across her cheek. The force sent her sprawling to the tile. A metallic hum filled her ears. He kicked her ribs, dragged her by the wrist, and snarled, "You think you are my equal?" Alicia shielded her face, pleading for him to stop. But Marcus was blind with rage, determined to remind her of his power. When at last he tired, he flung her across the living room like refuse. She lay still for hours, unable to move the chandelier above, swaying, as if mocking her pain. Her body throbbed with bruises, her spirit bruised deeper still. At dawn, she pulled herself to the bathroom and washed her wounds with cold water, biting a towel to stifle screams. In the mirror, she saw a stranger staring back. One eye swollen shut, lips split, skin mottled with red and purple. "Is this what marriage means?" she whispered. Her diary lay open on the floor. With trembling hands, she wrote, "I asked for safety. I received a lesson in hierarchy. This house has no windows, only mirrors. And in each one I see a stranger I cannot recognize." Days passed in a haze. Marcus offered no apology. He left early, returned late, carried the smell of perfume and whiskey. Alicia carried silence. The bruises faded, but the fear did not. Every sound became a signal, every step a warning. Then came the unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang mid-afternoon. Alicia peered through the curtain and gasped. Anthony Brown. Marcus's father stood outside in a tailored suit. She opened the door with trembling hands. "Good afternoon, Daddy," she murmured, lowering her gaze. Anthony studied her face. His eyes narrowed. What happened to you? Nothing, sir. Do not lie to me, he said firmly. Who did this? Tears welled before she could stop them. Words poured like a dam breaking. She told him about the insults, the beatings, the infidelity, the fear. She spoke of locked windows and nights on the welcome mat. She confessed everything but her silence because silence had already cost too much. Anthony listened without interruption. When she finished, the room was heavy with truth. He exhaled, shoulders heavy. Thank you for telling me, Alicia. You have done nothing wrong. His tone carried sorrow, but also resolve. He turned and left without another word. For the first time, Alicia felt a fragile hope. Maybe someone powerful enough to stop Marcus finally believed her. But that evening, Marcus arrived early. His face was thunder. You went to my father, he barked. You want to ruin me. I did not ask him to punish you, Alicia said softly. He asked. I only answered. Marcus's chest heaved. He did not strike her that night. Instead, his silence pressed heavier than fists. He ignored her for days, slamming doors, muttering curses under his breath. Alicia sensed something building. Saturday confirmed her fears. Rain hammered the roof as Marcus called her into the living room. In the center stood her old canvas bag, the one she had brought after the wedding. A pile of ragged clothes lay beside it. What is this? She asked. You are leaving, Marcus said flatly. You do not belong here anymore. Her throat closed. Where will I go? Not my problem, he snapped. He stuffed the clothes into the bag. Take only what you came with. He dragged her arm, ignoring her cries. They drove through deserted back roads until the car stopped near a garbage site. Marcus yanked her out. This is where you belong. Trash among trash. Alicia fell to the ground, mud soaking her dress. Her bag landed beside her. Marcus returned to the car and sped off, tires screeching in celebration of cruelty. Rain poured harder. She curled against a wall of tires, clutching the bag as if it could shield her. God, if you are watching, she whispered. I have no strength left. Headlights cut through the storm. A black car slowed, stopped. From within stepped a tall man in a spotless suit holding an umbrella. His eyes met hers, not with disgust, but with quiet compassion. He crouched beside her and said, No one deserves to be thrown away like this. My name is Darius Williams. You will be all right. Alicia swayed, too weak to answer. The stranger signaled to his driver, then turned back to her. Let me help you. You are coming home with me. The rain kept falling, but for Alicia, the night had shifted. For the first time, she was no longer alone in the storm. The mansion on the north side of Atlanta had never felt so quiet. Rain drummed against the windows as Alicia sat wrapped in a borrowed robe. Darius had given her food, a warm bath, and a room large enough to make her feel small. For the first time in months, she slept without fear that footsteps would thunder down the hallway. Morning light poured through the curtains. Mama Ruth, the housekeeper, entered with a tray of breakfast. Eat, child, she said with a motherly smile. You are safe now. Alicia managed a faint thank you, though her voice cracked. Safe was a word she had forgotten how to use. Later that afternoon, Darius returned from a meeting. He asked gently, Are you ready to talk? Alicia hesitated, then nodded. She told him everything. She spoke of being forced into marriage as part of a business contract. She described the insults, the bruises, the isolation, the night she slept on the welcome mat while rain washed over her. She confessed that even her uncle had turned her away. Darius listened without interrupting. His eyes held no judgment, only sorrow and respect. When she finished, she looked down ashamed. I know I must sound weak to you, she whispered. No, he said firmly. You sound like a woman who survived hell. That is not weakness. That is strength. Tears filled her eyes. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. Darius leaned back in his chair and exhaled. I built my career by knowing when to take risks, when to walk away, and when to fight. But what I saw last night shook me. A woman discarded like garbage in a city that should know better. Alicia whispered, "Thank you for saving me." "I did not save you," Darius replied. "I only saw treasure in the wrong place." He paused, choosing his words with care. "I want to help you, not out of pity, but because you deserve better, and because I believe your story is not over." Alicia lowered her eyes. She had not heard words of value spoken about her in years. Gratitude welled up, tangled with disbelief. That evening, as the sky blushed gold, Darius called his attorney. He wanted information about the house Marcus lived in, quietly, discreetly. He wanted justice, but not through fists or revenge, through law, through dignity. When he explained his plan to Alicia, she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Please, I do not want revenge. I just want peace." Darius studied her, astonished. After everything, she still chose forgiveness. He nodded slowly. "Then peace is what you will have." Meanwhile, across town, Marcus brooded. His father, Anthony, had confronted him days earlier, demanding explanations about Alicia's bruises. Marcus deflected with excuses, but Anthony's disappointment was clear. "You were given every advantage," Anthony said, "yet you used it to crush a woman who only wanted respect." His voice trembled with anger. "Do not bring shame on this family again." Marcus left the meeting seething. To him, Alicia had not only disobeyed, but had betrayed him by speaking to his father. In his mind, her words threatened his status, his income, his pride. He resolved to remind her of her place. Back at the mansion, Alicia sensed the storm gathering, even though she was no longer under his roof. She sat by the window of her guest room, staring at the manicured garden below. For the first time in years, she felt a fragile spark of hope. She clutched it tightly, aware that Marcus would not let go of control without striking back. Darius checked on her before dinner. He found her quietly humming a sound so gentle, it startled him. After everything she had endured, she could still create music out of pain. He thought to himself, this woman carries more strength in silence than most men carry in battle. Outside, the city pulsed with business deals and hurried lives. Inside, a war of spirit was being waged. Alicia had begun to rediscover her worth while Marcus plotted his next act of cruelty. The collision was inevitable. Saturday began with heavy skies. Clouds pressed low over Atlanta, promising a storm. Alicia spent the morning in the guest room folding the simple clothes Mama Ruth had given her. She moved slowly, her ribs still sore from Marcus's last attack. For the first time in months, she was breathing in peace, yet unease lingered. She knew Marcus well enough to understand he would not surrender control without one final act of cruelty. That afternoon, Marcus paced inside the mansion on the north side of the city. His chest burned with humiliation. His father's disappointment still rang in his ears. His wife's words had reached the one man whose approval he could not afford to lose. Rage stewed inside him until it demanded an outlet. By evening, he had made his decision. Rain began to fall just after dusk, a steady drum on the roof. Marcus summoned Alicia into the living room. She walked in carefully, sensing danger in the sharpness of his tone. In the center of the room sat her old canvas bag, the one she had brought after the wedding. Next to it lay a pile of the oldest clothes she owned, threadbare shirts, worn slippers, faded wrappers. "What is this?" Alicia asked softly. "You are leaving," Marcus said without emotion. "You no longer belong here." Her throat closed. "Please, where will I go?" "That is not my concern," he snapped. He stuffed the ragged clothes into the bag and shoved it toward her. "Take only what you came with. None of what I bought is yours." Tears blurred her vision. Marcus grabbed her arm with a bruising grip and dragged her toward the door. Rain lashed against the steps as he pushed her into the car. She sat silently in the back seat, trembling. her body soaked as storm water seeped through the thin fabric. Her tears mingled with the rain streaking down her cheeks. They drove in silence for half an hour, weaving through back roads that grew darker and emptier. Finally, Marcus slowed near the edge of an industrial district. The stench reached her first sour and choking. Piles of garbage rose on either side of the road, bags torn open, refuse spilling across the ground. Rats darted between heaps of trash. Marcus stopped. The car stepped out and opened the door. "Get out." Alicia shook her head. "Please, Marcus, do not do this." "Get out," he repeated, yanking her arm. She stumbled onto the muddy ground, clutching her bag. He sneered, his eyes full of contempt. "This is where you belong. Trash among trash." He turned back to the car and slammed the door. Tires screeched as he sped away, his taillights disappearing into the sheets of rain. Alicia remained kneeling in the mud, her body shaking with shock. The rain drenched her until she could no longer tell where tears ended and storm began. She looked around at the refuse, the broken bottles, the scraps of food crawling with insects. For the first time, she fully understood the word discarded. Not left behind, not forgotten, thrown away. She tried to rise, but pain shot through her leg. Her ribs screamed. She sank against a wall of old tires and pulled her bag close like a shield. Her voice broke as she whispered into the storm. "God, if you are watching, I have no strength left." Minutes passed. Then headlights cut through the rain. A black car slowed near the garbage site. Alicia blinked, certain she was imagining it. The vehicle stopped. From within stepped a tall man in a spotless suit, an umbrella in hand. His presence seemed unreal against the backdrop of rot and ruin. He approached carefully, avoiding puddles, his eyes fixed on her with something she had not seen in months. Compassion. He crouched beside her. "Young lady, who did this to you?" Alicia opened her mouth, but no sound came. The man's voice softened. "No one deserves to be thrown away like this. No one. My name is Darius Williams. You are going to be all right." He offered his hand. Alicia hesitated, then placed her trembling fingers into his palm. His grip was steady, grounding. She swayed as he lifted her, her legs nearly giving out, but his arm supported her firmly. He signaled to his driver. "Open the back door." Then he turned to Alicia. "You are coming with me." Within minutes, she was seated inside the warm interior of the car. Rain drummed against the roof while the engine purred softly. Alicia clutched her torn bag to her chest, unable to speak. No one shouted at her. No one raised a hand. Only silence, only warmth. Darius glanced at her from the front seat. "You do not need to explain tonight. Let us get you dry and safe first." Alicia turned her face toward the window. A single tear slid down, not from pain this time, but from the fragile shock of being treated with kindness. For the first time in years, she felt the faint echo of safety. As the car rolled away from the garbage site, Alicia leaned back into the seat. The city lights shimmered through the storm. Behind her lay the mud and the cruelty that had nearly broken her. Ahead waited something she could not yet name. Hope. The black car carried Alicia away from the dump, its headlights slicing through sheets of rain. She sat in silence, clutching her worn canvas bag on her lap. The leather seats smelled faintly of cedar. Warm air from the vents wrapped around her trembling body. For the first time in months, no insult hung in the air. No fist hovered above her. Only quiet. Darius leaned forward from the front seat. "You are safe now. We will get you food, rest, and warmth. You can speak when you are ready." His voice was calm, like steady ground under unsteady feet. Alicia lowered her eyes. She wanted to answer, but her throat locked. Tears pressed hot against her swollen cheeks. She turned toward the window and let the city lights blur. They pulled into a gated estate on the northern edge of Atlanta. White walls rose, tall, trimmed hedges framed the driveway, and security lights glowed like halos. The gates opened smoothly. Alicia braced herself for guards to stop them to point at her drenched clothes and mud-streaked face, but the guards bowed respectfully as the car passed. The mansion itself was vast, yet graceful, its marble steps gleaming in the rain. At the door stood Mama Ruth, a housekeeper in her 50s with kind eyes and a sturdy frame. When she saw Alicia, her mouth fell open. "Lord have mercy, what happened to this poor child?" "She was discarded like trash," Darius said quietly. "Help her clean up, give her food and let her sleep. No one will harm her here." Mama Ruth guided Alicia inside with a gentle hand on her back. "Come, baby. Let us get you warm." The scent of lavender and baked bread filled the hall. Alicia's legs wobbled as she climbed the staircase, but Mama Ruth steadied her. In a guest suite larger than her entire old apartment, a freestanding tub filled with steaming water awaited. Ruth hummed a hymn as she helped Alicia undress and lower herself into the bath. Warmth enveloped her aching body. For the first time in weeks, the sting of bruises eased. Afterward, Ruth dressed her in a cotton nightgown and tucked her into a bed layered with soft linen. On the nightstand sat a tray of jollof rice, fried plantain, and grilled chicken. Alicia's stomach growled, but hesitation held her still. "Eat, child," Ruth urged. "He said you must eat." Alicia lifted a spoonful to her lips. The flavor filled her mouth, rich and comforting. She began to cry, not the way she had cried under blows, but with sobs that shook free poison she had carried too long. Ruth sat beside her, holding her hand until the storm of tears passed. That night, Alicia slept deeply, her first unbroken sleep in months. Morning sunlight spilled across the suite. She awoke to the sound of birdsong in the garden. Darius knocked gently and entered. He wore a gray suit, his expression calm yet watchful. "Did you rest?" he asked. "Yes, thank you," Alicia whispered. "Are you ready to talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. Words spilled out in a rush. She told him about being forced into marriage like a pawn in a contract, about insults that made her doubt her worth, about the nights she was locked inside as though she were a prisoner, about begging her uncle for help and being turned away, about being thrown out into the rain like garbage. Darius listened without interrupting. He did not correct her, did not tell her she should have left earlier, did not label her foolish. He simply listened, his eyes steady with compassion. When she finished, shame tugged her head downward. "I must sound weak to you," she whispered. "No," Darius said firmly. "You sound like a woman who endured hell and survived. That is strength, not weakness." Her eyes filled again. "Thank you." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "I built my business by studying timing, by knowing when to hold and when to let go. But what I saw last night shook me. A woman treated like waste in a country that should know better." Alicia whispered, "You saved me." "No," he replied. "I simply saw treasure in the wrong place." He paused, choosing each word with care. "I want to help you not out of pity, but because you deserve better, and because I believe your story is not over." Alicia's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her with such respect. Gratitude swelled, mingled with disbelief. The next days passed like a dream. Alicia watered flowers in the courtyard. She polished furniture alongside Ruth. She found herself humming softly as she worked. Darius often returned from business and paused to watch her with quiet admiration. One morning he stepped onto the balcony and found her on her knees scrubbing the rims of his car. "Shola." "What are you doing?" he asked gently. She startled. "Good morning, sir." "I am not doing this because I must. I am doing it because I want to give back." "You have endured enough. You deserve rest." "Rest does not fill my heart the way work does," Alicia replied softly. "At least this way I feel useful." Darius studied her face. The pain was still there, but beneath it burned resilience, a fire no cruelty had extinguished. That evening, Alicia cooked dinner vegetable soup and tilapia seasoned with herbs. Darius took one bite, then another. "This is incredible," he said. She flushed. "Thank you." "When someone does not value you, it does not matter what you do," she murmured. "I value this," he said, lifting his fork. "And I value you." Silence fell between them, heavy yet comforting. Later, under the twilight sky, they sat in the garden. Fireflies blinked across the lawn. Darius shared stories of his youth, of selling brake pads before building his first shipping company, of losing his mother at 16. "Business was my armor," he admitted. "But now I see that healing comes from people, not walls." Alicia whispered, "I never thought I would feel peace again." He leaned closer. "I want you to have more than peace. I want you to have joy." The words lingered in the warm night. For the first time, Alicia allowed herself to believe joy might be possible. Days melted into weeks at the Williams estate. Alicia discovered a rhythm that felt like breathing again. Each morning she opened the curtains of her guest suite and watched the sunrise spill gold across the garden. She helped Mama Ruth in the kitchen, chopped vegetables, polished silver, and carried trays. Work steadied her, reminding her that she could still give, still contribute, still matter. Darius noticed. He often returned from meetings to find her humming as she arranged flowers or reading by the koi pond with sunlight in her hair. Each time he paused, studying the quiet resilience she carried. He had known models, politicians, daughters of power, yet none of them carried the quiet dignity Alicia showed after crawling out of despair. One evening he found her in the kitchen stirring a pot of vegetable soup. The aroma of crayfish and herbs filled the room. Alicia looked up nervously. "I was not sure if you liked spicy food." He tasted the soup, then leaned back in astonishment. "This is wonderful." Her cheeks flushed. "Thank you." "When someone does not value you, it does not matter what you do," she whispered. Darius set his spoon down. "I value this," he said softly, "and I value you." The words hung in the air like a promise. Alicia looked away, her heart racing, but the seed was planted. As days passed, they began sharing more than meals. They shared stories. Alicia told him about her parents, fragments of memory. She had clung to her mother braiding her hair, her father's voice reading scripture by candlelight. Darius spoke of his early struggles selling auto parts on street corners, building his company shipment by shipment. He admitted that after losing his mother, he had built walls around his heart. Business was safe. People were not. Now he said, "I see that healing comes not from walls, but from those we let inside." Alicia lowered her gaze. "I am still broken." "No," he replied. "You are mending. Choosing gentleness after all you endured is not weakness. It is strength." The words sank deep. For the first time, Alicia believed her scars could mean something more than shame. Nights on the balcony became a ritual. They sat by the koi pond, fireflies blinking in the grass. Sometimes they spoke of politics or music. Sometimes they sat in silence, letting the quiet itself speak. Slowly, trust blossomed where only fear had lived before. By the third week, Alicia laughed again. It startled her at first, the sound rusty from disuse. Ruth clapped her hands when she heard it. "That laugh, child, is medicine." Darius heard too, and his chest warmed with a hope he had not expected. On the 24th morning, the air felt different. The garden glowed with dew, and Alicia brought out a simple breakfast, cornmeal porridge and fruit. She placed it gently before Darius under the gazebo. He watched her with unusual intensity. "Alicia, I need to tell you something. Please do not feel pressured. I just need to speak the truth." Her heart thudded. She sat across from him, hands twisting in her lap. "I never planned to feel this way," he said. "But you have changed something in me. You remind me of who I was before money became everything. You bring peace into rooms where I only chased performance. You have shown me that strength is quiet, steady, and consistent." Alicia blinked, unable to speak. "I know you are still healing," Darius continued. "I am not asking you to forget your past. I am only asking you to let me build a new future with you." He reached into his pocket and revealed a small velvet box. Inside lay a simple gold band, elegant and timeless. Alicia's hands flew to her mouth. "You want to marry me?" "Yes," Darius said. "Not because I rescued you, but because I see who you are. Because I respect you. And because I love you." Her vision blurred with tears. "I have been treated like trash for so long. I do not even know how to feel worthy." He stood, took her hand, and knelt before her. "Then let me remind you every day." Her tears spilled freely. "Yes," she whispered. His smile broke wide. "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." That afternoon, plans unfolded quietly. There would be no headlines, no socialites, no flashing cameras. Just a chapel by the sea, a string quartet, Ruth in tears, and a barefoot flower girl from the orphanage, tossing petals down the aisle. Less than a month after being thrown into the mud, Alicia became the bride of one of the most respected men in the city. Darius did not see her as a victim or a liability. He saw her as his miracle, his partner, his treasure risen from the dust. The vows felt nothing like the transaction she had once endured. This time, each word carried weight. When Alicia said, "I do," her voice was clear and strong, unshaken by fear. She looked into the eyes of a man who valued her, and for the first time those two words felt like freedom. Justice did not arrive with noise. It came quietly through signatures, deeds, and the deliberate patience of law. 2 weeks after the wedding, Darius placed a set of papers on his desk. The mansion Marcus lived in had been purchased in full. The title now bore a new name, Alicia Williams. Marcus received the notice on a humid afternoon. A property manager arrived with a sealed envelope. "The house has been sold, sir. You have 30 days to vacate. The new owner wishes to take possession." Marcus ripped the paper open, scanning the lines. "Sold to whom?" The manager kept his tone even. "The new owner prefers discretion. However, she will be available to discuss the timeline with you directly." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The meeting was arranged at a downtown office. He entered late, disheveled, still smelling faintly of whiskey. His arrogance carried him only until the moment he stepped inside and saw her. Alicia sat at the table in a white blouse and emerald skirt, her posture calm, her eyes clear. She looked nothing like the broken woman he had abandoned at a garbage dump. She looked composed, almost regal. "You," Marcus stammered. "You are the new landlord?" Alicia simply nodded. "Yes." He blinked hard, searching for words. "How?" She did not answer that question. Instead, she slid the eviction notice across the table. "You have 30 days, but I am giving you 2 weeks." Marcus's jaw clenched. "You are doing this to disgrace me, to take revenge." Alicia held his gaze. "If I wanted revenge, I would not be sitting here calmly. I am only doing what you once taught me, to stop staying where I am not respected." Her words struck deeper than any insult. Marcus looked down at the table, his bluster collapsing. For once, no words came. As he rose to leave, Alicia added softly, "Marcus, I forgive you, but your cruelty has no place in my life anymore." The sentence lingered as he staggered into the sunlight, blinking like a man waking from a long, bitter dream. Everything he thought he controlled was gone. His house, his wealth, even her silence. And no one was coming to save him. Back inside the office, Alicia exhaled and whispered a quiet prayer. Not of victory, but of release. The weeks that followed unraveled Marcus's world further. His father demoted him within the family company, disgusted by the shame he had brought. Friends stopped answering his calls. His finances withered. By the time movers came to clear out the mansion, Marcus had little left but a suitcase and his pride, and even that was eroding. One evening he arrived at his father's estate, shoulders slumped, begging for shelter. "Please just let me stay a while." Anthony Brown folded his arms. "I gave you everything," he said. "You used it to humiliate a woman who only ever asked for respect. She forgave you, and still you threw her away like refuse. Your wickedness ruined you. You are no longer welcome under my roof." The gates closed. Silence echoed louder than any shouting. That night, Marcus slept in a rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. The ceiling cracked, rats scurried in the walls, and the fan squealed with each turn. He lay awake, haunted by Alicia's voice, "I forgive you, but your cruelty has no place in my life." Across town, peace had taken root. Alicia stood on a stage in the garden of her new home, fairy lights twinkling above. Guests gathered, women who had endured abuse, donors, friends, survivors. Beside her stood Darius, his hand resting gently at her back. Behind them a banner read, "Grand Opening of Haven Grace, a shelter for women in crisis." Alicia stepped forward, microphone in hand. Her voice was steady, strong. "There was a time when I believed suffering in silence was noble, that endurance made me a good woman. But I have learned something. No one deserves to be treated like garbage. No one should be thrown out because they lack family or power. Women are not property. We are not disposable." Applause erupted. Darius kissed her forehead as she cut the ribbon. Laughter, tears, and music filled the night. Healing had arrived not just for her, but for many. Later in the quiet of the garden, Darius whispered, "You changed everything." "No," Alicia said, resting her head on his shoulder. "I just refused to stay broken." In that moment, he knew he had not married a victim. He had married a woman who rose from ashes and turned pain into a fire that would warm others. 6 months later, the courthouse in downtown Atlanta was filled with the rustle of papers and the shuffle of footsteps. Alicia stood before the judge, her hands steady, her gaze calm. Marcus had not appeared. No lawyer spoke on his behalf. The divorce was uncontested, dissolved in less than 15 minutes. When the judge declared, "You are now free," Alicia smiled. Not the smile of triumph, but the quiet release of someone who had survived the fire and walked out whole. Outside the courthouse, sunlight bathed the city streets in gold. Darius waited near the steps, dressed in a gray suit. Their eyes met. "It is done," she whispered. He nodded. "Yes. Now we begin again." They did begin again. Alicia chose not to dwell in bitterness, but to transform her pain into purpose. The profits from the rental property that had once been her prison were donated to vocational training for women escaping domestic violence. Tailoring, cosmetology, baking, even computer skills filled classrooms that buzzed with laughter and determination. One of the first beneficiaries was Ren, a former taxi driver, who had lost everything after fleeing an abusive husband. With support, she became the official driver for Haven Grace, her first assignment, picking up women who had been turned out with nowhere to go, just as Alicia once had been. News of the center spread quickly. "From discarded wife to builder of hope," read one headline. Alicia declined interviews. Her work spoke loudly enough. Survivors filled the shelter, learning not only skills, but also dignity. Meanwhile, Marcus drifted in shadows. His bank account dwindled, his friends vanished, his name no longer carried weight. He slept in motels, sometimes on couches, sometimes in shelters where no one recognized him. He nursed regret like a bitter drink, replaying Alicia's words in his mind. "I forgive you, but your cruelty has no place in my life." One Saturday morning, Alicia returned to her old neighborhood, not as a discarded woman, but as a guest of honor at a community seminar. Young women gathered, some with bruises hidden beneath sleeves, others with eyes still wide with fear. Alicia stood before them, her voice clear. I was once told that obedience meant silence, that enduring cruelty made me a good woman. But I stand here today not because I stayed silent, but because I chose to walk away. The room filled with applause. Some girls cried openly. Alicia smiled not because she was free, but because she had found purpose in her pain. Later that night, she sat with Darius in the garden of their home. The air was quiet, filled only with the hum of crickets. She leaned against his shoulder and whispered, "I never imagined my story would become light for others." He kissed her hair. "The fire that nearly consumed you became a flame that warms the world." Above them, the stars spread wide, bright against the dark. Alicia closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The girl who had once been silenced in a cathedral, locked in a mansion, discarded at a dump, had risen. Not by vengeance, but by resilience, dignity, and love. Her story was no longer only her own. It belonged to every woman who needed to know she was not disposable, every survivor who needed proof that grace could rebuild what cruelty tried to destroy. True strength is never proven by how much suffering we can endure in silence. It is revealed when we walk away from what breaks us, choose dignity over despair, and build hope for others. Every ending can be the first step toward a brighter beginning.